Welcome back, everyone, to Bone Density Education. We are talking today with a gentleman who has also been told he has low bone density osteoporosis, and he has had an incredible story of getting it into osteopenia and almost back to normal ranges. And we're going to hear all about that. Welcome, Paul, and thanks for making the time to chat with us today.
No worries. Thanks for getting up early in the morning to accommodate my time.
All good. And I know you're in New Zealand. You were saying in a ski town.
Yeah.
And that's actually we're going to come back to that. Talk about skiing and snowboarding and osteoporosis and the risks that come with that. But let's start by kind of hearing a bit more about you, Paul. So, how did you come about to being told you have osteoporosis?
Yeah, it was a bit of a surprising one. I kind of had a brief period of time, probably about 2 or 3 weeks, where I just had really high heart rate and my HRV was a bit off. So I just made an appointment with my GP just to get some routine bloods done. So and then with that, I found that I had low calcium, which is obviously something which is quite tightly controlled in the body usually. So I pretty much decided to see whether or not that was a transient thing or more long term, and just went and just booked a DEXA scan around the corner from where I work. And then looking at that, I was expecting just to see relatively normal, but then that came back osteoporotic, and I was a bit taken aback, quite surprised. So yeah, it was a bit of a sudden jolt into it.
Okay, so did you have a history of breaking bones or any of those kind of classic?
Yeah, in the past, of never really any fragility fractures, more kind of like just being a bit dumb and jumping off things and breaking stuff. So nothing that kind of like rang any alarm bells. But 2 years ago, I had a pelvic stress fracture. So that was probably the only one which kind of like made me a little bit more concerned with bone density in hindsight. But I wasn't really that worried about it then. I was running quite a lot, and I got hit by a car right before having my MRI, which kind of turned a stress fracture into a proper fracture. So
wow,
yeah.
Okay, so you were running quite a lot. Were you running marathons or?
Yeah, just a lot of long distance stuff. Just like few ultras, and just just keeping the volume up, keeping fit.
That's actually something that I've heard happens in people who are very active, particularly marathon runners, triathletes as well, and then they get these stress fractures, they get scanned, and the osteoporosis comes up. And these are generally very healthy young individuals. And I had a orthopedic surgeon who was one of my friends and colleagues, and she would see a lot of athletes like that, and they kind of broke it down to potentially the nutrition side of things.
Yeah, like REDS and low energy availability is quite high in people. It's actually quite hard when you've got a population of people that you just actually struggle to keep on top of adequate enough nutrition to kind of like cover all of the training and stuff you're doing. And people try and keep their weight down for their racing, and then so REDS and low energy availability is very common in the long distance running world, and I think that's probably what kind of predisposes people to having the osteoporosis and low bone density.
Yeah, and there's there've been studies done on people and animals as well who are engaging in long-term, those kinds of long endurance exercise activities, and how the body draws out from the bone to modulate the muscle to keep it firing over a long period of time.
Oh, absolutely.
There's an argument for that as well. All right, so then tell us what was it like to be told you have osteoporosis as a man, and as a young man as well.
Yeah. No, it was very strange. I mean, the first thing I did is I just called my wife and let her know, and then we just sort of like started talking about it, making a game plan. And my initial reaction is always like, okay, well, what can I do to try and fix it or turn it around? So I just kind of went straight into research mode, really.
Yeah. And what were you researching at that time?
The first thing, because I'm obviously being a physio, like my first fallback is just to go into what kind of bone loading protocols are out there. So just jumped straight into Belinda Beck's work and looked into the Liftmore trials and stuff like that, which a lot of that's done in population groups which aren't the same as ours. But, when you see 65-year-old plus like postmenopausal woman being able to put on bone density with doing heavy lifting, you start thinking, well, I'm much younger and, like potentially more metabolically active. So I'd expect that I could get equal, if not better results to kind of what they were showing in their studies, really. So that was my first kind of thing to look into. And then, follow on from that is all the other stuff, all of the nutrition and then also investigating the underlying cause of what might have caused it in the first place,
Yeah, so let's go into that a little bit more. So the GP refers you for a DEXA scan. You come back and say, "Hey, Paul, you've got this thing, osteoporosis. As a young man, we're going to have to look into it a bit more." Did they come up with anything?
Yeah, like basically just following as many avenues as I kind of could. I've got a really good GP. So he was quite willing to kind of try and explore all the options he kind of could, and just sort of like following all the channels that he could. Referred me to an endocrinologist as well, but that takes a little bit of time to get into. But he was obviously thinking about it. I got a phone call once when I was making dinner at about 6 p.m. and it was my GP saying like, "Hey, I just had a thought that maybe we can look at this, and should we order this test?" So he's obviously like at home still thinking about his patients. So, So having that kind of support's quite good,
Yeah, it sounds like a fantastic GP. That's great.
Yeah, I know.
That is fantastic. And so, all right, so yeah, there is a whole swath of tests that generally, a good doctor will put you through at that point. I had a similar experience. There were all kinds of tests and bloods and urines and all sorts of things like that. And for me personally, it came up with nothing kind of to pin it to. It was more kind of trying to piece together all the different potential things that could stack on top of each other. So was there anything in your situation where they come up with the old idiopathic?
Yeah, so the one thing which they did find, and I'm still not 100% sure about this, is at the same time that I had low calcium blood tests, I also had parathyroid hormone is in the kind of normal but low range, and the endocrinologist was saying that that's potentially a sign that my parathyroid hormone is not reacting to the low calcium levels as it should. So potentially just continuing to excrete calcium out of the kidneys and not really paying much attention to those low calcium markers. So, but I just did another test where I had normal parathyroid, normal calcium, and I've just been running for about 35K. So I'm like, doesn't really fully add up, but but there's nothing really major out there. The testosterone was at the lower end of the normal range, but nothing crazy really.
No, yeah, I had similar kind of a thing that my testosterone was also at the lower end of normal. No particular thing to pin it on. But then, all right. So then you chat. You said you got you called your wife. You guys were talking about what to do, and then as a physiotherapist, you went to the exercise. So tell us a bit more about your experience with the exercise and what impact that has made on your bones.
I mean, I quite like it. I've never been too much of a fan of getting into the gym, but there's something quite nice about just, shifting a whole bunch of weight under you. So I started off going 3 times a week, just doing just what the research protocol kind of says, 80 to 85% of 1RM. I started off a lot lower than that and just built into it because, didn't want to just jump straight into it, boots and all, and give myself any injuries and stuff. So I just did 5x5 of the deadlifts, the overhead press, the squats. I didn't do the jump to lands, which is also in the protocol, but I figured that I was keeping enough running ticking over to kind of have enough impact in my life to not worry about that too much. So I chucked bench press in there because, you gotta I don't know, it's quite enjoyable to chuck a bit of bench in there if you're doing a bit of powerlifting.
Even it out with the back exercises.
Yeah. And then at the same time of that, at the start, I did quite a lot of accessories as well, just to make sure I just in general my body could tolerate those loads. So I kind of just did a lot of the antagonistic movements, and so a couple of days in the week in the gym doing those.
Yeah, awesome. And we'll talk about the results of all of that in a second. But as a physiotherapist, you're probably quite well conditioned. You said you were running a lot. You didn't have, other than the pelvic fracture, which, I mean, that would have, did that have any rehab done? Did you do any rehab?
Yeah. Lots of rehab, but considering that had an underlying stress component to it, that was like also a lot of rest as well. So it was just a lot of rest and gradual introduction to loading exercises. So, but yeah, I'm constantly rehabbing some description.
That's kind of what I was thinking. That a lot of men listening to this, they would have had, maybe they have a fracture, maybe they've had lots of fractures. I know for myself, I'd fractured both ankles, the wrist, and ribs, and I never really did any rehab on them. And so the idea of going into hitting the gym and lifting 80% of your 1 rep max, that seems like it's going to break. At that point, it would have broken me if I had done that. So, you know, when you think, putting your physiotherapist hat on, when you think of all the fellas out there who are, maybe they're recovering from a fracture, or maybe they have an ankle issue or a lower back issue or some shoulder things. How do you go from there to lifting, 80% of your 1 rep max?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got kind of like things which are going to limit their ability just to jump into heavy loading exercises, like, straight away. So I think it's just addressing those and making sure that you're doing enough rehab to put them into consideration. You're listening to your body and just taking your time. With osteoporosis, you're not going to get a DEXA every 2 weeks to be able to measure how you're going. It's going to be quite a long game. So I think just taking your time with it and just making sure you're putting people around you just to slowly build into it, and just monitoring any little niggles and just making sure that you're just taking care of yourself.
Yeah, that patience. I find the hardest part is often having that patience with yourself to keep sticking to it.
Absolutely.
Keep doing the rehab.
And I think young men have got a tendency to, if you tell them to go to the gym and do deadlifts, the first tendency is to see how much they can lift, which is never a good approach. Telling them to kind of just tuck a couple of 5 plates and get the movements right is never what they want to hear, right? Like they just want to stack it up as hard as they can and see what they can pull off the ground.
Yeah, and a lot of people listening to this are probably a bit older as well, and they're like, the idea of just doing that seems like pain.
Oh, right. Yeah. Maybe it's an indication of the patient load that I see, that they kind of would want to just jump straight into it rather than shy away.
Yeah, you're saying you see a lot of young population in your clinic. Do you see a lot of athletes?
Yeah, quite a lot of athletes base themselves in Queenstown. So there's a lot of people out there doing stuff, both recreational and high level. Yeah,
right. Okay. And so then, if you had a more of an elderly patient come to you who hasn't been exercising, who probably, let's say they've never been to the gym, they like things like tennis or an outdoor kind of a lifestyle, but now they can't because of the fractures and the fear around a further fracture. Like, what would you recommend? Not going to the specifics, but just generally, how would you say, hey, this is what you need to think about, this is what we need to do?
Yeah, probably just starting really light, making sure you're getting the movement patterns right, and just building that confidence by repetition in really sub-maximal tolerable environments, and then just building the confidence naturally. So just being really careful just to make sure that they never kind of just don't overreach too much and then do things which are going to put them off, like progressing nice and slowly and considerably,
Yeah, and I think that's the key, is the time frame can be a little bit challenging, because there are people who do it quite quickly, and we all want a quick result. And I think that's kind of the environment that, in the system that we're all in, is like there's a pill or a quick fix, and that's what we're looking for. But I find that with osteoporosis, it is a lifelong journey of keeping that. I try to imagine it like when the kids play with the balloons and they're keeping it up off the ground. Yeah. That's kind of like your bone density. It's always kind of headed downwards, and we have to just keep hitting it up, and that just continues for the rest of our lives. That time frame of thinking long term, not, hey, I want to get this thing fixed or cured. It doesn't happen that way. It's like this is a lifelong journey. We're gonna insert these habits that you can enjoyably continue. So what if someone doesn't like going to the gym? What would you say they could or should be doing?
Oh, I mean, there's many ways to skin a cat. I think I quite like the gym environment because it's something which I can kind of like just look at research and apply research. But if you look at what they're trying to achieve, it's all stuff that can be done at home, right? Like it's just changing those lifestyle things. I've also got a weight vest, so I did a lot of weight vest walking as well, which obviously you don't want to chuck someone straight into, but just increasing that axial load on the spine to get adaptive changes. There's many different ways to do that. So yeah, home-based stuff is always completely fine too.
Yeah, fantastic. And you mentioned earlier that your wife played a significant role in helping you. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, she's a dietitian, and she's a researcher as well. So she's works in that field. So it was quite useful, like both from the nutrition point of view, but also from the understanding science point of view. So having someone with a lot of knowledge in that kind of helps you to actually look at research articles, critically appraise them a little bit more, and actually just understand the science that it's all based on. So it's not just about the specific knowledge from her field of expertise. It's also just knowing how to like look at research and apply it appropriately.
Right. So then from that, what surprised you guys? What I mean is, there's common things that people say, and then what understanding the research may reveal. Were there any surprises? Anything that kind of stood out to you guys?
Nothing really big and surprising, I don't think. I think the surprising thing is really the fact that most, like a lot of the medical fields seem to be about slowing the process of it, not actually doing something to turn around your bone density, which seemed quite surprising considering how adaptable all of our tissues are. Like it seems odd that we take an approach of trying to stem any further loss in order to try to, in the future, kind of like, relatively speaking, be a little bit more higher on that like list. It seems like a very odd approach to take, really, I guess.
I agree. I think that there's some base assumptions that people have accepted as fact, and they've just kind of gone with it. Where one of those base assumptions is that you can't change your bone like you can't reverse your bone density. It's just going to continue to go down, and you've just got to accept that and hope that it doesn't go down too much.
Yeah, I mean,
and I think that's completely wrong. Like,
no. We don't take that same approach with muscle. We don't say that people reach peak muscle mass at 30 and then it continues to decline due to sarcopenia. Like everyone knows that if you get into the gym at any age, it might be harder the older you get, but you can always actually improve your muscle quality, your muscle tone, and your muscle bulk. And bones are probably a little bit more stubborn. They take more time, but it's another biological tissue that just adapts due to set principles, like it's specific adaptations to impose demands. You place those demands on it and the body adapts. It seems an odd approach to not take the same approach to muscle as we do to bone.
Yeah, exactly. It's like at my interview with Belinda Beck, she said that, if you're doing it right, it's physically impossible to not improve your bone density or significant. If you're doing it correctly, because it's just physiology and physics.
Absolutely. And those people were a little bit beyond 30 that she was looking at as well.
She said that she had people. There was one individual with a T-score of -6 or -7, some ridiculous number that I'd never heard of before. They were doing it.
And you'd be very, very, very timid with how you approach with those people, right? Like, I don't think, you
don't go straight to 80% of 1RM at that point. You slowly work, and at that, but it's not, the age is not a limiting factor. I found that the two limiting factors are whether people want to do what's required, or number two is whether they are physically address the physical limitations.
Absolutely,
to doing it. And I think if those two are addressed, there's no reason why.
No, and I count myself very lucky. I didn't have many handbrakes in that regard. There wasn't really anything keeping me away from the gym. The gym's on the way home. I'm physically capable of getting there. So, a lot of my results that I've had and stuff like that has been just due to also being a little bit lucky in the physicality that I've got and the motivation. So,
and I think your wife as a dietitian, diet is a big part of osteoporosis reversal as well.
absolutely.
But also you had A class though, is that right?
I did, yeah. So as soon as I got it, as soon as you're below negative 2.5, you can get fully funded a cluster infusion. So I decided, like, when I was running around trying to think of all the best things I could do, so I went and got that infusion done within a week of getting my DEXA done.
Yeah.
So, yeah, hadn't looked too much.
I think
to be honest.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that where there are times where it's required and it's important and people should do it depending on their situation, and I think that was something that was recommended to me as well. I guess I'm just, with my medical background, I was like, no, give me 6 months and then I'll give it, and then I'll do it. But then I came back 6 months later with a improved bone mineral density. And so at that point, it was like, well, okay, I'm kind of on a good kind of run here, and I didn't end up going there. But tell me about that. What was that like? I mean, people say all kinds of things. What was the experience like of getting that infusion?
Yeah, I think I was one of those people who experienced quite a lot of symptoms directly
Okay,
afterwards.
you did. Okay.
So I got it done during a work day on a Friday. So I went in there in the morning on a Friday, continued to work, and I was just like, oh, this is completely fine. I don't know what they're talking about. And then in the middle of the night, I just was in excruciating pain. Like, it took me about 15 minutes to make my way to the bathroom, kind of stuff.
Wow.
It was, yeah. So, and that lasted for a couple of days, but then eased off. And then I just had just normal delayed onset muscle soreness, like if you normally did, and then it went away. Okay. But yeah, those couple of days, I probably shouldn't have got it the day before Mother's Day in hindsight. So, because I was stuck in bed and said, Happy Mother's Day, look after our 2 children all day.
Oh, no.
Yeah, after that, there was no ramifications afterwards, but that couple of days was pretty rough.
Okay. And so they kind of resolved on its own, or was there any kind of treatment that was required?
Oh, no, just resolved on its own. Yeah. So and it was one of those things I read up that a lot of people get that. I was kind of frantically on Reddit trying to see people's experiences with it, and I saw enough in there to go, okay, cool. This is what happens sometimes. Okay. And
yeah, it can be a bit scary at times.
Yeah,
it's good to kind of hear a story. And so I didn't know you had 2 kids as well. So
yeah.
So when you were told, you had osteoporosis and what that meant, you could fracture things, and you'd had a pelvic fracture, which is a significant thing. Did that kind of have any? Did it play on you, or kind of your seriousness about how you approached your osteoporosis reversal? Did that have any effect?
I don't think so. I mean, I've had enough broken bones now to kind of go to not really be, that scared of them, I guess. I've had 16 broken bones and I still get out there and run long distances and manage to rehab really well from a lot of them. So
okay, 16. We're gonna go back to that, Paul. That I thought, yeah. I was imagining 1 or 2 from falling off, a skateboarding, half pipe or something. So tell me, 16. How does that? How do you acquire 16 fractures?
Just by being a bit dumb. I think I was talking to you and I said, I've had many times where I'm doing an activity and my skill just runs out, and then and bad stuff happens. So yeah, so I've broken tib fib jumping off cliffs, skiing. I've broken my femur mountain biking. I've done, when I was younger, I compressed 3 vertebrae in my thoracic spine. So just various kind of things throughout the years. They sort of happen every couple of years.
Okay. You reckon?
Rehab. I think that's part of the reason why I am a physio, actually, is because I've rehabbed so much. It kind of it's, use myself as a bit of a self experiment on rehab, but it can be really successful, right? I think my body.
Yeah, I mean, you look at you. I think you're a shining example. 16 fractures and still kicking ass and taking names and going well. I think that's a shining example of what's possible with physical rehab and diet and
Yeah. Wow. So the idea of kind of fracture risk, I don't think that really played on my mind so much. But just having low bone density, I was definitely, my first instinct is how can I reverse this and how fast can I do it? I've got a little red book. It's just called Bones. So this is just where I kept a diary of just all the stuff that I've been doing and trying to follow the process through.
Right. Okay. Can we hear some of the things that you've done from there?
Well, it's all pretty simple, really. Like it was just originally was just optimizing my calcium and vitamin D, because both of those, obviously being quite required for that. So I just started supplementing with vitamin D. Calcium, I originally started just with just trying to work on increasing my dietary calcium. So just getting regular calcium through there. I do take a couple of supplements as well, especially around exercise. And I took that a bit more seriously when the endocrinologist suggested that my parathyroid hormone doesn't quite react properly. So I kind of tried to take a little bit more calcium around that too. And then originally, because I had quite low testosterone, I did supplement that for only about a month. But the whole idea of actually having a gel, and then I had 2 young children, I was just like, I'm just wasn't that comfortable continuing along that, and it wasn't something which I just wanted to jump into injectable testosterone to optimize the levels of that. So I didn't follow down that pathway.
Okay. And you said you had supplements around the exercise part of things. What kind of supplements?
Just taking calcium citrate. So either I make my own electrolyte mix. So when I'm out running, so I just boosted up the calcium that I usually put in through that, and just changed it to calcium citrate to make it more absorbable.
Okay. So nothing like creatine or anything like that?
Oh, yes. That's a bit more long-term, though. So I do supplement with creatine. So I just take 5 milligrams a day in the morning with a multivitamin, which I don't know if I need a multivitamin. It just tastes the water, makes the water and creatine go down easier, I guess. Chuck a Berocca in there, and it's just like, oh, cool little,
it's a special little drink that you have, some me time in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't necessarily think that's necessary, but it's just something I do.
All right, and so then you're exercising, you're supplementing, and you're eating differently, and then tell me about the follow-up scan.
Yeah, so I got a follow-up I think it was a bit less than 8 months, and showed that I had about 13% increase, and my DEXA scores went from -2.5 to -1.5. So yeah, I was pretty close to I was pretty happy to get a full standard deviation shift within 8 months. I was very surprised. Yeah, I actually went into that scan just to make sure it wasn't still decreasing, to be honest. I was just making sure everything was going according to plan. Like my bone density is not worsening from what I'm doing. And then, to have that result, I was pretty happy, really.
Yeah. Well done. That is a great result. That's fantastic. What did your GP or endocrinologist say about that?
I haven't seen the endocrinologist since. I just pretty much had one appointment with the endocrinologist, and I haven't followed up. GP was pretty happy, but we just kind of looked at the results, looked at what we're doing, said status quo. Let's just follow on the same thing, really.
Cool. And so, what's the path from here? What's the plan? More of the same? Are you upping it? Are you changing it? So,
yeah, I'm not really upping it, because when I went into it, I went into it pretty hard, and I put on about. I think I put on 11 kilos in those 8 months. So I went from 71 to 82 kilos by just lifting, eating a lot, and put on a fair bit of bulk to be able to move around that weight. So 82 kilos wasn't my happy place for running. So, so I've actually just stripped back just a little bit to make running a little bit more comfortable. And with that, I've actually had a slight reduction in the weights that I'm lifting, but I'm still lifting fairly heavy, but just keeping those weights consistent. So I think if my results weren't as good, I would have kind of gone down the, get a coach, do some powerlifting and really go hard with it. But with the results as they are, I thought, cool, I could probably find a nice middle ground at the moment where I can still run how I want to run and not feel so heavy and bulky, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's a good insight there, where a lot of people, they're like, I don't want to be powerlifting. I'm not into that. I like tennis. I like pickleball. I like all these other things. And and you like running. and so you're kind of optimizing so that you can keep doing the thing that you love, but also doing some gym work so that you can maintain it over the long term. And that's
Yep.
kind of the key here. And that's interesting. You put on 11 kilos. Do you think that played into anything there? Like, what do you think? What effect do you think that?
No. It's just like, in order to progress your lifting, you need to put on muscle bulk, and in order to put on muscle bulk, you need to eat a lot of protein, and
Yeah,
the lifting is the stimulus to kind of like put on mass, and wasn't all muscle. There's a bit of column A and a bit of column B putting on there. I was like optimizing nutrition. It was probably over optimizing it. Um, but no, I think that was just part of the parcel. I really kind of threw myself into the lifting and just did everything I could to try and get as much load through my spine, and with that comes trying to increase a little bit of muscle mass to try to lift heavier weights.
yeah. That I think I emphasize that because that is an important part of the process. Because to put on lean muscle, lean weight is kind of the key. And the
Mm.
studies have shown that increasing lean weight, which is increasing muscle, is osteoprotective. But in your case, it was osteobuilding as well.
Yeah,
And that's what I found as well. Like for my journey, I really jumped into the powerlifting. I've really enjoyed that. I want to keep doing that. That's kind of my running.
yeah.
I love doing it. And I've been doing body composition scans as well, just to kind
Mm-hmm.
of see, is it muscle, is it fat? And I have put on in the last about year, I've put on about 8 kilograms, and that's
Yeah,
been about 50-50
yeah.
muscle and fat. And so I've kind of then just adjusted that as I go. And I think some people are, there's a lot of emphasis on not putting on weight and staying thin. And I find that in the male population who have osteoporosis, we tend to be on the slimmer side.
Definitely.
And so putting on a little bit of muscle weight is not a bad thing. So we're not talking about, putting on 20 kilograms of fat or more or anything like that, really. It's all about key is to put on the muscle weight, because then that puts the pressure on the bone, which then causes it to strengthen.
Yeah, I mean, there's the whole like people looking at BMI, which is not necessarily the best thing to kind of look at. You should be really looking at just your lean muscle mass and how you're holding the body weight from that. Because if you look at BMI, the whole front row of the All Blacks and the Australian rugby team are all obese, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, you tell them that in a scrum, right?
yeah, exactly.
You're not going to do very well. Cool. All right. Any kind of tips or words of advice to the fellas who have been diagnosed with osteoporosis and are wondering what to do?
I think it's just about trying to look at optimizing all the different levers. Everyone's going to be completely different, like so. Some people are going to their main handbrake might be something completely different. It might be stress, it might be sleep, it might be nutrition, it might be vitamin D, it might be there's such a raft of different things that can change your body physiology to basically be maladaptive for your bone density. So I think that just trying to nut out what works best for you, pulling the right levers, and just trying to look at the long term of what you can do, and like you said, treat it a little bit like a long term thing that you've got to like look at. And to be honest with you, it's been, I don't want to like to say fun, but like in a way, kind of like actually, lifting heavy weights and getting fitter and getting stronger is a pretty good outcome from those test results, right? Like when you look at like down the track, I'm sure you feel a lot better now that you can lift a few more weights. You probably feel stronger and healthier, and it's like it's great for your bones, but it's also just great for you as a person, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I'm getting chills when you say that, because I honestly believe that diagnosis was the best thing that happened for my health, or more specifically, the response I had to that diagnosis, the changes I made, the habits that I took on, the habits that I dropped. I'm in the best shape of my life now as a result. Like, it wouldn't
Yes.
have happened otherwise. Like,
No,
honestly.
no. And there's got a lot of other flow down effects as well, and just in terms of how you feel, how you interact, and like it's just good for your overall health and well-being.
Yeah, that's it. Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us, Paul. Thanks for making the time. I
Yeah,
know
no
you've got a
problem.
busy clinic there in Queenstown in New Zealand. So thank you for making the time. It's amazing to hear your story, and thank you for sharing that with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.